Everyone experiences stress. It's a normal part of life. And that stress can be felt physically or psychologically if you have too much to do or too many things on your mind or you're just not sleeping well. And it can come as a result of worrying about things like jobs, money, relationships, or a friend or family member who might be in crisis. Now, this next account won't take long to tell. But it's an example of how everyday stress can cloud the mind to the extent where even rational people can behave in excessive and bizarre manners. And I think you'll find this family story extremely strange. 51-year-old Mark Tromp and his wife, 53-year-old Jacoba, owned and operated a red currant farm and a construction business in Sylvan, Australia, located just outside Melbourne. By all accounts, they and their three adult children, Rihanna, 29, Mitchell, 25, and Ella, 22, were a normal, industrious, and successful family. Mark was known as a devoted workaholic, and Jacoba was a friendly sort who would often visit neighbors and share her passion for the jams and jellies made from the red currant fruit. On Monday, August 29, 2016, they all suddenly got into Ella's silver Peugeot SUV and drove north towards Sydney. But this was not a family outing, a day trip, or a business excursion. For all intents and purposes, they were fleeing their home. And the series of events that followed would result in one of the strangest missing person cases in Australian history. With the entire family suddenly abandoning their home, police were called to look into their unexplained absence. Inside the unlocked house were passports, credit cards, and their cell phones, which only added to the mystery surrounding their abrupt departure. Not only were these items crucial to their current whereabouts and security, but leaving them behind would make it very difficult to track their movements. The family station wagon was parked with the keys inside, and piles of financial documents were discovered arranged in a neat and orderly manner, as if someone was going through them. At this point, it appeared the Tromps had, for reasons yet unknown, gone completely off the grid. It would eventually come to light that Mark and Jacoba were both exhibiting signs of stressful paranoia, and that one or the other had become convinced that they were all in imminent danger from someone trying to kill them and steal their money. Their son Mitchell refused to believe their lives were at stake and was certain that his parents' fears were unfounded. He was the only one to take along his cell phone and had accompanied them all merely to ensure their safety. Nonetheless, his parents were becoming even more agitated and delusional, and upon discovering he was in possession of his phone, forced him against his better judgment to throw it out of the car window just under 20 miles from their home, convinced the phones could be used to track them. Throughout that day and night, they would drive almost 500 miles from Sylvan to Bathurst, just west of Sydney. At 7 p.m. the night they arrived, the disillusioned and frustrated Mitchell broke off from his family. The following morning, the remaining four members drove east from Bathurst to a popular tourist spot, the Jenolan Caves. There, Rihanna and Ella decided they had endured enough of their parents' delusionary actions and also chose to abandon them. Desperate to do so, they stole a utility truck and drove south to Goulburn, where they reported their parents as missing. Once in Goulburn, the sisters parted ways, with Ella wanting to go back home to feed the horses. She was, in fact, the first Tromp to be found when she arrived there on Tuesday night, where the police had already gathered awaiting signs of life. Mitchell would arrive the following morning after taking the train back home from Sydney. Their story would attract the attention of the media and the curious public, anxious to know how a family could vanish, become separated, and in one case still elude detection. The Tromp parents were not reported seen in the immense and foreboding Australian outback, but in close proximity to heavily populated towns. Mitchell and Ellen were seemingly none the worse for wear, either physically or emotionally, after their ordeal, but Rihanna was a different story. She had stowed away in the back of a sport utility vehicle in Goldburn, where she was eventually discovered by its operator, Keith Whitaker, who had been driving with his unknown passenger for an hour until he felt a kick to the back of his seat. He found Rihanna in a catatonic state, unable to remember her name or where she was. She was later taken to Goldburn Hospital, where she was placed in psychiatric care. She wasn't charged for the theft of the vehicle that got her there based on her mental condition, but Ellen did in fact face charges for the same offense. They were eventually dropped when its owner came to better understand the situation. Meanwhile, the search for Mark and Jacoba intensified. They drove back toward Melbourne from the Jenolan Caves, and by Wednesday, while in the town of Wangaratta, they also became separated. Jacoba was found the following day in a disconcerted state, wandering the town of Yass, some 222 miles away from Wangaratta. There she was hospitalized and then transferred to Goulburn, where she and Rihanna underwent psychiatric evaluation. While all this transpired, Mark remained in Wangaratta, where he reportedly dangerously tailgated a young couple while still driving Ella's Peugeot SUV. They reported that when they pulled over, Tromp got out of his car, rushed toward them, then abruptly stopped to stare at them before walking into nearby Merriwa Park. There were a number of break-ins in town in that time period, including a motel, but it could not be determined if any were directly connected to him. Growing concerned about their father's whereabouts and mental state, Mitchell and Ella appeared before the media, claiming to be completely perplexed by their parents' erratic behavior. Mitchell had not seen this type of conduct before, and he was primarily concerned about his dad's safe return, stating he didn't believe he was dangerous and that he loved him. The last domino to fall occurred when Mark Tromp was found running on a street near the Wangaratta airport on Saturday, some 6 days after the whole affair began. He was questioned by police, underwent a mental health evaluation, and then was released to his brother, who ironically was a police officer. As he was driven away, he flashed a middle finger to the photographers who had gathered. In a later statement, he apologized for the hurt and concern caused by these events. He also thanked officials for assisting his family, while the public attempted to sort out exactly why this had all taken place. One police officer called the incident the most bizarre case he'd seen in 30 years. Sergeant Mark Knight of the New South Wales Police expressed his own thoughts on the matter, having known the family. He claimed there were no prior mental health issues he was aware of, nor drug use, or debilitating debts owed, or affiliation with any religious or cult-like groups. To him, it was, in his words, just a massive meltdown. Mitchell Tromp claimed his parents were victims of build-ups of everyday stresses that manifested into fear for their lives until they decided to flee from the pressures. No further charges were filed, with police concluding it was now a family affair. The Tromps are all back working on their farm near Sylvan, but have removed the company website and all contact details since returning from their bizarre adventure. Now, there has been some speculation that perhaps chemicals and pesticides used on the farm affected the family psychologically, but toxicity tests ruled those out as a possibility. But there is another prospect to consider, and that's that the family was suffering from a collective delusion known as folie à deux, a French term meaning madness of two. It's a rare psychological condition that occurs almost exclusively in close-knit families. We covered this on a prior episode of Extremely Strange when we delved into the bizarre actions of Swedish sisters Serena and Ursula Eriksson. And while we don't know which of the Tromp parents first introduced the delusion, it was clear that each had fallen into a cycle of reinforcing the others. And the kids basically went along for the ride. Literally. So stresses can certainly get the best of us, especially when things look the darkest, and while we try to take a breath, pump the brakes, and smell the roses, it's not always just as easy as that. But always try to remember in the worst of times that we're here for a good time, not a long time.